Death is one of those topics we all know is coming, yet we often avoid talking about it. It's uncomfortable, uncertain, and sometimes downright scary. It's one of the few things in life that is universally true, yet it remains shrouded in silence. We're taught to live, to strive, to pursue happiness, but no one ever really teaches us how to die or how to prepare for it. We're not given much space to discuss mortality in a meaningful way, and I think that's something we should change. We all know death is inevitable. It doesn't matter how healthy we are, how much money we make, or how many accomplishments we rack up. At the end of the day, we all face the same reality, and yet, how many of us really allow ourselves to think about it? How many of us avoid the thought, pushing it away like an uncomfortable guest we don't want to deal with? It's almost as if we believe that by ignoring death, we can avoid it, or at least delay it. But the truth is, death isn't something you can outrun. It's a part of life, not a separate entity waiting to swoop in when our time is up. And acknowledging that it's coming doesn't make it any easier to bear, but it can give us a different lens through which to see our lives. In a strange way, accepting mortality can make life feel more precious, more meaningful. We don't always know how much time we have. It could be a few months, a few years, or even decades. None of us can predict exactly when our time will come, but we do know that it's a ticking clock we can't control. When we face death head on, there's something that shifts inside of us. We begin to ask ourselves, what really matters? What do I want to leave behind? And perhaps most importantly, am I truly living? There are many ways people approach the concept of death. Some are terrified of it, convinced that it's the end of everything. Others may embrace the idea, thinking of it as a peaceful release from life's burdens. Some may view it as a natural part of existence, simply the final chapter in the great story of life. For some, the thought of death brings sadness or grief, and for others, it brings a sense of calm or even curiosity. Each of us has our own unique perspective, and that's okay. There's no right way to feel about it. But one thing is for certain, facing death can help us reframe how we live. Think about it. If you knew your time was limited, would you live differently? Would you take more risks? Would you spend more time with the people you love? Would you be kinder to yourself, to others, or more patient with the moments that seem insignificant? A lot of the time we get caught up in the grind of day-to-day life, work, responsibilities, tasks, distractions. We rush through life without truly appreciating the small, simple moments. But when we allow ourselves to reflect on the reality of our mortality, it forces us to step back and reassess. What do we want our legacy to be? How do we want to be remembered? Based on the idea of death also makes us realize how fragile life really is. It's easy to take things for granted. Our health, our loved ones, our time, these things seem so permanent until we experience a loss, a health scare, or a moment that brings us face to face with the fact that none of us are invincible. It's in these moments that we often ask ourselves if we've done enough, if we've lived fully. And the truth is, maybe we haven't, but that's not a reason to despair. It's a reason to act now. Death, in its own strange way, can be a catalyst for living more intentionally. If we can come to terms with the fact that our time here is limited, we might make better choices. We might let go of petty grievances, forgive those who've wronged us, or finally take that trip we've always dreamed of. We might stop waiting for the right moment and start living in the present. We might begin to appreciate the small things, the warmth of the sun on our skin, the sound of laughter with friends, a quiet moment in nature. One of the hardest things to accept about death is that we can't control it. We can't plan for it in any way that guarantees we'll be ready. But what we can control is how we live our lives. We can choose to be present, to be kind, to make the most of every day. We can leave behind a legacy that reflects the best of us, our love, our passion, our joy. We can choose to live with purpose, knowing that each moment is a gift, even if it's fleeting. It's important to talk about death, to normalize it, because in doing so, we give ourselves permission to live more fully. When we're not afraid to acknowledge that death is part of the cycle of life, we can start making choices that reflect our true values. We can be more present with the people we love, we can follow our passions, and we can appreciate the beauty in the world around us. So while death is inevitable and something we can never fully control, how we choose to live in the face of it is entirely up to us. Maybe that's the real lesson, understanding that life is short and we have the power to make the most of the time we have. In the end, death is just one part of the story, just the end of one chapter, but the beginning of another. We can't avoid it, but we can live in a way that honors it, that makes every day count. And that's a powerful thing.